This week on the Digital Marketing Scoop, it is all about search engine optimization, SEO. We've gone back on the archives on our podcast and pulled out all the great tips and tricks that people have given us over the years on search engine optimization. Really hope you enjoy this episode. Now, there is an absolute rake of information out there on SEO. A lot of it good, a lot of it bad. But the way I always try and break it down is to think about, okay, how does Google actually rank websites when you break it down to its simplest form? And the way they do that is they look at the site, they see the content that's on your site, and then they look at, okay, is this content good? Is it bad? And they look at the links coming in from other websites to that content to see it as almost kind of a vote that content is good. So if you have links coming in from like really very good, very authoritative websites to your content, that's going to help your ranking. That is at its simplest, most base level, essentially, how Google ranks your website.
Yeah, I mean, it has we could be here for an entire week going through everything they take into consideration. But at the very most basic level, that would be stripped completely back.
Obviously, look, there's huge amounts of factors that come in. There's page speed, and there's how you've structured your metadata. There's structured data as a whole other area to go into. Yeah. But I suppose what I'd like to do today is just kind of break down the process. I think is it's something you can use first of all and implement, and it's something you can see results from reasonably quickly. Yeah. The way people often start off with SEO is they go, okay, these are my keywords, and the first thing I will always say to them is, how do you know those are your keywords? Yeah. How do you know that those keywords are the ones that are going to convert traffic into leads or convert traffic into sales? Because we all, in our own mind, for our own business, we all have this idea of what the best keywords are that we should be up there for. Yeah. So look, what we love to do here is start off with Google Ads. Make sure all our tracking is set up correctly so we know what keywords leads are coming from, what keyword sales are coming from. And after time of running your Google Ads campaign, you're going to pull out your search terms report, and you're going to be able to see the specific terms that actually led to the leads and sales that you generated. Yep. And there is no better data than your own data to be able to tell you which keywords you need to start targeting for SEO.
The SEO world is shrouded in this weird ass mystery, and it is the worst for these misconceptions that can happen.
Yeah, no, it is 100%. And I mean, you go way back and it was all about people buying links and buying as much links as possible to the website, and then keyword stuffing and stuffing the keywords onto the page. Yeah. And you know what? Many years ago, that did work for a little bit.
Absolutely.
But I mean, if I go to my LinkedIn inbox, there are still every single day people guaranteeing me number one spots with doing.
Why aren't you taking them, Mark?
I know. I should outsource all my work to these people because these are fucking amazing. No, and it's true. And, you know, the number of people that say, I build links in this way, and I'm going, do you realize who you're talking to? When you send these spam messages to me on LinkedIn, do you actually look at my profile and go, hey, he might actually know what he's talking about? So I'm not going to say that I create all of these links from these farms, and there's thousands of them, and they'll get you number one spot. And, you know, they're from Amazon, and they're from Facebook, and they're from Google themselves will link back to you. You fuck off. You know, just have a little bit of common sense when you're doing these things. But, you know, all of that and all of the advice that goes around it, you know, it's not just the spam messages that get sent around. There's advice that gets sent around from agencies and experts and fucking gurus and shit like that say this thing and the other. And I'm not saying all of it, but some of it certainly. Actually, no, I'm going to take that back. A large proportion of it is absolute bullcrap. Because usually, and I wrote a blog post about this where I talked about SEO sound bites, okay? Soundbite SEO advice. And I think that's one of the most damaging things, that you can provide a lot of advice when it comes to SEO. You can say this, but usually it's in the form of a soundbite. So it's like, hey, get all your meta descriptions sorted and you'll rank #1. And I'm sitting back and going, well, I know that's fucking bullshit. Yeah, meta descriptions help. They help with click-through and they help with this and they help with that, but they don't fucking help you with number one rank. You need to provide some context to your advice. You need to not just say one sentence and expect, well, of course, it gets people excited. You know, I work with a lot of bloggers, and they'll say, you know, they pick up this kind of thing because they're not going to go to courses and they're not going to do this and do that in terms of trying to learn this stuff, which can be quite expensive. So they really grab onto this SEO advice, and also they've all got their communities, they've all got their pods of communities. So this bullshit kind of just swirls around this ecosystem and community of people, where they go, well, Karen said that if I do my meta descriptions, then I'm going to be #1 spot for, you know, this product, and it's just not going to happen.
And the thing about it as well is that it's so dangerous. Like I know of a legal firm, I won't mention who, but they a few years back they bought backlinks and ended up with a ton of backlinks from porn sites, and that is not ideal for your legal firm. And especially now, like all of those backlinks are just like null and void. Like, you know,
I mean, what I will say, law firms, you know, they don't have any sense of humor either, which really doesn't help in that situation when you're talking to them saying, hey, we've just backlinked your site with porn. I mean, sometimes you do it for, just to make an interesting client meeting, you know. No, but you're absolutely right. You know, it can be a very, very dangerous thing to do.
I think the thing as well, people try and make SEO sexy, while in fact it's the most boring thing in the world. If you're going out, you need to produce really helpful content, good content that's actually going to help people, that people are going to want to engage with and share. That's not as sexy as do this change to your website and it's good, so you're going to go to #1.
You're right, because there are a lot of sexy marketing tools now. Okay, you know, we now live in this modern world where video marketing is really, really hot. Content, you know, content marketing in general is kind of hot and sexy in terms of we can create really good content now in the form of Instagram stories and Instagram posts and Snapchat and TikTok now, which is now, you know, absolutely exploding because everyone's stuck in their houses just dancing to shit. But you know, that content marketing is really sexy, and SEO is really not fucking sexy. But at the end of the day, SEO is still and will be for a long time to come until something, you know, and it's not going to be another search engine, but something knocks Google off its pedestal. It will still be so powerful in terms of an inbound marketing channel and route, and that's going to happen for a long time to come. And it takes, you know, the problem I think with SEO is a lot of the misconceptions come from, again, like I said, this advice. And what people are not doing is explaining the kind of backstory. You know, you need to have a certain level of understanding on what the hell Google is, how it operates, how it works. You know, if you were to do a family fortunes kind of a survey out on the street and you asked 100 people, how do Google rank all of the websites in the world? I will bet you the answers would be absolutely terrifying, because they'll probably say, well, there's some guy in the background sort of every time you type a search query and they're probably just quickly grabbing all the websites and shoving them onto
a little nerd in the basement somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And I bet that's the case, and having that understanding that actually, well, no, it's an algorithm and it works on these bases, and we don't know everything about it, but what we do know is they're providing what Google essentially want to do is provide the best value to their users regarding the search queries that they type in. You know, then things like backlinks from porn sites or backlinks from link farms and stuff like that will start to click in people's heads, and they'll go, well, if Google just want to provide the best value to their users, then maybe this isn't the way to go. Or maybe creating 20,000 different variations of pages for the 20,000 variations of this one keyword because I want to try and rank for every single variation isn't the way to go. And maybe creating one really stellar, awesome piece of content for this particular keyword or this particular phrase is actually the way to go, because that's going to provide more value to my users. And I think the mindset of just separating Google from user is really, really important as well, because I think some people just really want, I think there's some inbuilt kind of want and desire in us to confuse computers and to be able to get one up on a computer. So if people can say, well, you know, you can trick Google into ranking you #1 if you do this little trick, or into doing this little tweak on your website, or hey, put this plugin on your WordPress site and it will help you. You know, we like that because we think that we're getting one up on the system and we're tricking Google a little bit. So maybe they like that a little bit.
You want to write for your users, you want to write for your customers, you want to write for your clients, you want to provide content that's going to answer their questions and help them, because that's what they're going to be searching in Google. There was a time, you know, where you stuff keywords into articles and tag loads of keywords in the back end, and it could maybe a long time ago potentially help. But does not help anymore. So anything with, you know, I need to stuff all my keywords into this article or into a title, that doesn't really work, unfortunately.
I know. I remember.
Well, actually, quite fortunately, because the results are a lot better now.
I remember even a few years ago, I was learning SEO and they were just telling me, you know, get these keywords in like 30 times into this like text. And I was just like, how do I fit this in? Like, this doesn't even make sense. I'm just like writing, like, I don't know, the keyword again and again in random sentences. And it was just like, nobody wants to read that then. You know, like, I know there's the thing, like keywords are a factor, but like if nobody wants to read it, then it's useless. So it's valuable content that they want, basically.
Valuable content that is going to answer people's questions that they are searching and that they will share, because that's going to bring links back to your website as well if they're sharing the content, which is going to help improve your rankings.
Yes, exactly. And another note as well is to publish like new content, fresh content that's unique regularly and kind of more consistent. Because you can see like some of your articles might be 3 or 4 years old. Yes, they answer great questions, but they're getting kind of old now. Just to refresh all your content every now and again and get new, unique content up. Definitely, especially like if you have a blog post ranking really well that, you know, could be 4 or 5 years old. And you know, it's talking about, I don't know, let's say top 5 digital marketing tips for 2016. You're like, okay, we'll refresh this. We'll for 2020, 2021. 2021. I know it's February. We're still not used to 2021. We're like, oh. So yeah, no, I mean, updating your content is important as well to keep it relevant. As well, a tip we did here with a client. Basically, we wanted to rank organically around a particular product sector. So within the site was built on WordPress. So what we did was we created loads of content around the products in that sector. And so we had a category page with all the content on it. And we optimized that category page for more the broader keyword on that sector. And then all the individual content within it were really, really niche around like individual elements of all those products. I'm being vague here now, so I just don't want to give away the client. But what we did was, so we maybe 50, 60 articles, all really good content, reviewing the different products, helping people around those products. But then there was one top level category where all that content was, and it was all searchable and everything. And they ended up ranking really, really well over time. And I suppose that's the other thing to be aware of. People think, oh, my website's live, I'm not ranking. SEO is a long process. It is about producing the content on an ongoing basis, answering your customers' questions, you know, with your content, and as you said, providing valuable content to them. So it is not something that's going to be an overnight success. Like with that particular client, that we're working with them like 7 years. And it you know, long-term SEO certainly does pay off, but it is not the short-term fix. If you want the short-term fix, that's where Google Ads comes in. Yes, exactly.
You know, we need to start thinking of this as a search engine. You know, it's not search engine optimization anymore. It's an answers engine, and that's what we're providing. And users are the people that need answers. So if you're writing your content, if you're building your website out or creating a sitemap for your website, and you're thinking about how you can answer the key questions of your customers, of your users, And that's the way that you need to think about it, rather than thinking, well, you know, I need to rank for this keyword, and I need to, because this has got all this volume behind it, and if I create this page, then I'm going to do that. And I suppose we need to stop thinking that. Don't even think of it of, I'm going to do this for Google 50%, and I'm going to do this for my users 50%. Let's start thinking about this, because I'm going to do this for my users 75% and this for Google 25%. So let's have that 25% of our brain thinking about Google, rather than the 50% of our brain thinking about Google when we're building our websites or when we're creating our content.
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it, I think. Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, you do come along, and you know, we see it ourselves with clients, and again, they've seen all the information that's out there with regards to SEO, and they'll have a local area, and they'll want to create a page for every local area with the exact same duplicate content across everything, but just change the name of the area, so they'll try and rank for you. Like, no, that's not good.
It's terrible, isn't it? Because it's been around for so long, and as we've seen so many sites that do. And do you know what? Like you alluded to before, Mark, you know, it did used to work in the past, and so I think another element of this is making customers and clients understand that things do change, you know, and this whole process, this algorithm, this Ark of the Covenant does change a little bit and adapt a little bit, because users change and our behaviors change. So it's keeping them up to date with that. And I think sometimes if people learn something 10 years ago, it's learnt, you know, it's like what they learnt at school. The curriculum hasn't really changed in 20 years. So why should the SEO curriculum change in 20 years either? And so I think a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs, they just think, well, I've learned this 20 years ago, therefore it still must be fact, it still must be true. And they're not updating their learning with the way that things move forward.
Yeah, for sure. And that actually makes me laugh a little bit, because when I finished my master's last year, and the SEO module, the lecturer at the start actually said, by the time you're finished this module, it's probably going to be like null and void, but let's get cracking anyway.
Yeah, it is. And it's crazy, because I do always think this, because I obviously have to employ people now. And I hire a lot of apprentices, and I hire a lot of sort of experienced people as well. And when I hire apprentices, I have to sort of depress them, because I think when they're an apprentice, they just want to learn something and then be good at it, and then it's an easy life from therefore. But I have to sort of depress them by saying, you know, you're going to be learning this for like ever, don't you? You know, you're not going to stop doing this. I'm not going to stop making you go and watch this webinar or read this blog article or go to this conference or whatever. You know, it's always going to be there. I'm really sorry about it, but I suppose it's just a mental attitude that, you know, I'm very fortunate that I get to employ people that just love to learn and take all that on board. But yeah, it doesn't stop. It'll never stop. And hey, you know, it'd be fucking boring otherwise, wouldn't it?
It's part of the fun.
Yeah, it is part of the fun.
Yeah, and that's a tough question now if you're hiring a digital marketing executive at some stage. Do you like to learn?
Yeah, exactly. Do you like to learn? Do you like to spend at least 2 hours of your day just going through the endless blog articles that come through? You know, I have to sort of have obviously you onboard staff now, and part of my onboarding is sort of saying, now you need to set up a Feedly account, because that's where I have my source of knowledge. My Feedly account just pulls all of my, you know, search engine journal stuff and all that kind of, you know, all those blogs, Moz blogs, all go in there. Just have that, and just for 2 hours a day, just go through and read it and keep abreast of it. Because I'll tell you what, if you don't do it for a week, you're almost out of step, you know. And I used to, it's another thing about the algorithm updates as well. You know, we used to have massive algorithm updates, Penguin and Panda and Pigeon and all that kind of stuff. But that doesn't happen anymore, probably because they ran out of words beginning with P, but it doesn't happen anymore because they're so frequent and they're so constant. And let's be honest, algorithm updates aren't events anymore. They constantly happen. They happen every day. They're just sort of subsetted into this subset of, you know, this type of query, or within this particular vertical. It's always constantly fluxing and changing, and we just have to keep abreast of that.
Mm.
I think that's probably some good advice for people as well, who are, if they're not working with an agency or anything like that, but they're running their own website and they want to try and keep up to date and stuff, rather than, you know, finding the latest guru or whatever, go to those more trusted sources and set up a Feedly account and have your information flowing to you that way. I think that's a really nice way of actually getting good information in the industry.
Yeah, no, it is. And I did a blog article on my blog. Obviously we all went into lockdown, and it is an opportunity for everybody to sort of learn something and learn a new skill. And so I decided, well, I'll do lockdown learning, but so I thought, well, I'll do lockdown learning where you can learn about SEO. And then I thought, well, shit, there's so much SEO shit out there, and that is SEO information out there, and not all of it is sort of qualified. So I thought, well, I'll go out and I'll source all of these, individual resources. Moz has made their resources free and their training free, which is generally quite good advice if it is only at a beginner level, and all that kind of stuff, and just pool it into one place. Because I think the difficulty with learning SEO at the moment is trying, we all as sort of experienced people in this field now have almost got a bullshit filter built into our brains where we're going, well, that could be right, or that could be bullshit. And sometimes we have to go and check it and implement it on a site maybe and see if it has any impact. But most of the time we kind of know, and we go, no, that's not right. That's
fake SEO news.
Yeah, precisely. Fake SEO news. I have to really sometimes, because I do worry sometimes, because I try and sort of call people out as much as I can when I see this kind of stuff. And I have to worry that I'm going down this Trump route of just saying fake news to everything and saying no. So I'm not doing that anymore.
If you're doing an SEO kind of audit of your own website, the things that you should start looking at and the things that you should start doing. So for me, look, that always we start SEO, I always actually start with Google Ads, which I know sounds strange, but for me, you have to know what keywords are actually going to convert into sales. Yeah. So once you've done that, we'll say you have your keywords established that you want to rank for. The most important thing is to make sure Google can actually reach your site and index your website. Yeah.
It's extremely important. I mean, if your website isn't indexed with Google, you're not ranking for anything.
Yeah.
Simple. Yeah.
So a very simple way to do this is to set up what's called Google Search Console. Once you have that set up on your website, Google will come back telling you everything that's indexed, everything that it hasn't been able to access. So you can see then, okay, what particular areas need to be worked on. One thing actually that does happen occasionally, especially in WordPress, is there's a little button telling people, that little button that tells Google not to index your website, and people are wondering, why is my website not appearing in search results? So within WordPress, there is actually a little button to tell Google to not index your website. So make sure that's unchecked if you're if you want Google to index your site.
Step one.
Step one, yeah. So kind of step two then. Okay, Google's indexed my site. Okay, where am I ranking? Yeah. So your brand name, your keywords that are important to your business. Yeah. Where are you ranking for those keywords right now?
Yeah, I think brand name especially is important, because if you're not ranking for your brand name, that's alarm bells pretty quickly, especially if you have an obscure business name. Like if your business name is related to a generic term, I wouldn't be as worried about it. But if you have an obscure or kind of an unusual business name, not even unusual, but one that doesn't kind of relate to everyday conversation or something that people would be searching for other things for, you should be ranking in the top 3.
Yeah, and I mean, look, it's hugely important, especially we'll say if you've sales reps out on the road, they're handing out business cards. The first thing person does, they go to Google and they type in the brand name, and there's something else appearing ahead of you that's going to potentially confuse that customer. Yeah. So obviously, look, the very minimum, someone types your brand name into Google, you want to be up on the top there. Yeah. One thing you can do that can make that quite quickly is to register your business on Google My Business. Yeah. So you're just marking your business's location on Google Maps, putting your business name in there, and straight away you're going to have a much better chance of coming up when people do search your brand.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if people are searching location-wise closer to your business, because it'll take into consideration the location of the business as well.
So the next thing then, okay, we found the keywords we want to rank for. We've established where we are positioned for them. Yeah. So the next thing is to look at our site and go through some of the on-page factors that are potentially affecting your ranking. One common mistake I see a lot is that in the title tag of your website is hugely important, and people will have the same title tag across every page of the website. So let's say your business sells widget A, and that's your main product, but you also have widget B, C, and D. And on the pages for widget B, C, and D, it's still talking about widget A in the title tag.
Yeah.
So it's extremely important to make sure that your title and your description tags are customized to the content on each page of your website.
Yeah, and even the I mean, like you have your H1, your H2, your H3, and just making sure that you actually have the page structured properly. So you have your header title, you have your any paragraphs you have that they have proper headings. Making sure that you're actually a really good thing about this as well is if you're looking at it, you may as well structure a lot of your paragraphs into kind of question answers, especially with voice search coming forward.
Yep.
So just
good
make
for structured data as well.
Yeah, exactly. So just make sure that you are providing quality information in a really structured way. The more structured it is, the easier it is for Google.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we'll say you've done all that now. You've optimized all your content or the tags and the structure of them all. Next thing to really have a look at is the speed of your website. It is a very important ranking factor, and it's very important for the user experience.
Yeah.
And we did a podcast, I think, just on site speed actually a while back. So if you are having issues with the speed of your site, go have to listen to that podcast. But one thing you can do straight away is to go to GT metrics, pop your website in there, and it will spit back a lot of the problems that you're having on your site with regard to speed.
Yeah, and usually a lot of them will, like we said before, it'll be quick fixes for a lot of them. But if there is bigger issues, that's time to flag a developer to come in and take a look, or your own developer. Yeah.
It gets worse at an enterprise level because typically you have more fingers all over the dials. Yeah, you've got more fingerprints all over the place. There's loads of different people in the CMS adding stuff, changing stuff. Adding. The person that adds case studies is not the same person that adds, the typical content on a service on a service page, for example. So you have more fingerprints all over the place. So that's where it's really important for us as an agency to make sure that when we were doing that process, we were making sure, okay, how do we make sure that things like that don't happen again? Because there's going to be so many people. How can we, quote unquote, dummy proof the website, make it the best user experience for a back end, not just a front end, to ensure that we're keeping the website future proof for years to come? And in that case, that's where we start implementing, like I just mentioned, server side image optimization or conversion to pull those things out. But there are other things as well that we just, people forget that websites are quite living, breathing things. A static website doesn't really exist anymore, and they change quite a lot, and people ask for new things. So it's important that you can't just do this process once a year. Well, you can probably do it once a year, but you can't just do it once on your website and then expect it to work. You really have to do this process quite a few times, because any changes, new features that you've added to that website may in fact incur some kind of issues in terms of web optimizations. New JavaScript, for example, can be introduced onto a page, and that can cause issues because JavaScript can only be loaded in a certain way. Typically, and again, I hope none of my developers are listening, but developers are quite lazy. Okay, they'll build something really quickly, and then they might not think, oh, how's this going to affect loading? So you have to have those conversations. So typically, to put this into context, what happens when we do these audits is there's me sat on a call and my lead developer sat on a call, and I will sit there with the lead developer and I'll go through your typical web audits. And I advise anybody to do this. If you're worried about your user experience and your web experience on your website, then go and use PageSpeed Insights. It is the best tool. I still don't understand people use the GT matrix and stuff like that. Why do that? Use Google's own, because Google's the one that cares. And if they tell you to do something, then do something. So go and use WebSpeed and just start putting pages in. Don't just put your homepage in. Your homepage is a different kettle of fish than every other page. My advice is just identify what your main templates are, okay? So you might have your homepage, your contact page, your service page, your product page if you're e-com, your category page if you're e-com. Take your templates.
And even for this enterprise, what we discovered when I did this enterprise one, we had about 10 templates. It's not huge. It's not a huge amount. We run all of those through Page Speed Insights, and we saw what the results came out. And we started to go through those results bit by bit and identify what those issues are. And then the process after that, once you've identified them, is one, you'll end up identifying global things. Yeah, these are things that might be in your header or your footer or a part of the infrastructure of the website. If you identify a global improvement, then quids are in, because you've basically means if you fix it once, you don't have to fix it on every other template. So what we identified with this enterprise level, and I'm not going to name them because I don't want to embarrass them, is that we found when it was built, actually, I've been only embarrassing my developers anyway. When it was built, all the JavaScript was compiled into one file. So it was basically, this is a big JavaScript file, and it was done in that way to kind of help with performance in its own way. It was trying to make sure that we're not trying to download multiple files all at the same time. It's trying to download one and then it's done, and it can be cached and all that kind of thing. But actually, what we're finding is actually we could probably break out this file into not all of its individual elements, but certain segments of elements, and go, okay, well, this only needs to load here. This needs to load right at the end. It doesn't need to load right at the start of the loading process, and that kind of thing. And doing that process is quite involved, because then you're talking about a lot. But because it was so global and it was on every single page, we typically found that fix, which was 1 to 2 hours to reformat all those JavaScript files, decrease page load speed by a couple, even a couple of seconds in some instances, depending on the page. So it was really an effective means of doing it. If you can find global things, that's great, but you've equally got to find the small things as well. And in this case, we're only talking about web page speed, and that's not just the only thing we're talking about when it comes to this Google experience.
No. But I think you hit on a really important point there. When people are using tools like GTmetrix, Page Speed Insights, they put in the homepage, nothing else. They put in the homepage. That looks good. Yeah, good to go. Even e-commerce site, you're like, your product pages are so important, and that's where you're going to have all the big images, maybe the videos of the product, embedding iframes from YouTube. There's going to be so much content on those pages, and they're the ones that you really need to look at. Yeah, so definitely, if people have used those tools before, go put your other pages into them.
Exactly. Really important to put those pages in. You can't just assume that your website is your homepage, because it's not. And I think people don't understand that Page Speed Insights just looks at a page by page, okay? Because it just asks for the domain, so it's kind of confusing. But putting loads of pages. Another example, we saw this was not our website. I should stress this in this case, because I was looking at it for someone that was coming on board with us, but it was not our website. And we did the same thing where we're looking at a category page, like you said. So this is a page which has got lots of products on there, and it's got lots of pictures on there, because there's 30-40 products all on there. The problem with that page, it was loading terribly slowly, and we couldn't really get our heads around it. And they were questioning, why is our conversion rate or our click-through rate like really, really low? The problem is that all of those pictures, the little tiny pictures, they were like 150 pixels by 150 pixels, but they were not loading 150 pixels. They were loading 1,050, 500 pixels by 1,500 pixels. So they were loading 10 times the amount of size that they needed to, and then they were just being shrunk down into this little box. And then there was 30 of them all on a page. So it was grinding everything to a halt. So things like that, that's a really easy thing to sort out. If you know what you're doing and you can do it, it's a really easy thing to sort out, to make sure you're just compressing those images down on the server side, having all of those images depending on what resolution you've got, and then pulling those through. Quick, easy job, and massive savings in terms of page speed.
If we're looking at obviously the overall page speed is important, but one of the things is how quickly, as in first input, basically, how quickly the site comes up for the user, that initial. Other things can be loading in the back end, as you say. You can have JavaScript to load later on, but it's that first input. So how long it takes that person to actually interact with the site. And they've broken all that down into, I can't remember the three of them offhand. First input, cumulative layout shift, and there's one other one that is
largest contentful paint is
largest
the
contentful
yeah. So they've broken these out. So Google has always given us Google have never said implicitly this is the rules that you have to follow. We've had a rule of thumb that's been your site needs to load within 3 seconds, which is fluffy and nothing. And we've kind of had rumors to say, oh well, page speed only really affects the bottom 10%, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't really mean anything. So for Google to come out 12 months in advance, now 18 months in advance, and say, hey, these are your 3 rules, and we're even going to give you some specific numbers to go along with them, I would sort of sit up and listen. Because if history is to tell us anything, Google never tell anybody jack. And never tell anybody, they won't tell anybody jack 18 months in advance. Okay, that's unheard of. Okay. Even major algorithm, we don't really get major algorithm updates anymore. We had we have these core algorithm updates every so often, and they're tiny and they're insignificant, and clearly this is Google's way of sort of drip feeding things through. We've not had a major core algorithm update for years. Panda, Penguin, all the P's, they've all been and gone. We don't get them anymore. So for Google to turn around and say, these are your 3 rules, and we're going to give you specific numbers in which to meet, I specifically would really stand up and listen to that, because I think it's really cool. And look, Google, if you read their documentation of Google, they'll say, oh, it won't affect everybody. It'll only affect a small. It will. Okay. I can assure you it really will, because I am shocked. I'm still shocked to this day, the amount of websites that I look out and realize just quite how slow these websites are. And now that we've got page speed insights and we can see the information about CLS and FID and all of those metrics at largest contentful paint, you can see how far off the mark a lot of them are. So I implore you to go and check out your website. And again, like I said, don't just look at the homepage, look at a series of pages, because for us to have these very specific rules in the SEO world is completely unheard of. We don't get rules in the SEO world. That's why we're all cowboys. No, we're not. We don't get them. So to have them is really, really important. And really, if we're going to do anything, we should follow those rules.
Brilliant. So, man, if you were to break down, for small kind of people listening to this, kind of generally kind of, small business owners, people in marketing departments, they've probably never looked at this side of things before. If you were to kind of say, okay, guys, here's a couple of steps right now. Here's what you should go off. Here's what you should go and do that can hopefully maybe get you some quick wins on this side of things. What would you say to them?
That's a good question. Number one, you need to understand what you're dealing with. It's the audit process. So like I said, go away and put your website, a couple of your website main template pages. And it's like you said before, Mark, the main landing page of a website is not the homepage, okay? Unless it's branded. And if you are thinking, oh, I really need to rank for my branded term, then you're mad, okay? Because in most cases, you don't have to. The major landing page for your website is not the homepage. So just putting in the homepage and going, oh, we're fine, is the worst thing that you can do. Like you said, major landing pages are things like category pages in e-commerce. Like you said, product pages in e-commerce, things like that. So service pages in e-commerce are going to be the ones that create, service pages on normal sites, for example, lead gen sites. They're going to be the ones that acquire the most valuable traffic for you. So you need to be putting in these pages, and you don't need to do it template wise. So if you've got 5 services, say, don't put in every service page. They're all going to be much of a muchness. Things like how many words are on a page or how many pictures it has, things like that. It won't really have an effect. If you've got an issue with images and pictures, it will tell you. So don't think about putting every single one in. But put your major templates into page speed insights. Do that and see what comes out. It's generally in plain English, okay? There's some technical terminology in there. If you don't understand it, source someone who knows what they're talking about. Or reach out and ask us. And I'm more than happy to decode any page speed insights on LinkedIn or anything like that. I'm more than happy to do that. But go and find out what you're dealing with. And then in certain cases, there are a lot of things that you can do. The first one, if you're seeing, certain server things pop up in your reports, go and talk to your web hosting provider and see what they say, see what recommendations they make. You are paying for the service, so unless you are paying for a subpar service, then you shouldn't expect a subpar service. So go and ask them, because they will just keep you on whatever metal that they have put you on. They will try and avoid moving you around if they're at all possible. So go and ask them.
I suppose just one thing from that side of things as well is, depending on the content management system you're on, you can get hosting that's specifically built and optimized for your particular content for your content management system as well, which will make a massive difference.
Absolutely, because you want everything to work in unison as much as possible. We do a lot of work on Umbraco, and for Umbraco, we have to use the Azure network by Microsoft. The Azure network by Microsoft works with Umbraco in such a nice way, and produces those results for us. It's the same with the majority of the web is on WordPress, and you can get hosting which is specifically orientated towards being on WordPress and optimized in such a way. So yes, you should be looking into that. The other big one is typically images, like we've discussed. Take a look at the size of those images. If you're working on WordPress, there are plugins that allow you to that will allow you to sort of help with that regard. Another thing on WordPress, by the way, because I have worked on WordPress, a lot of WordPress sites in this case, even though we don't work on WordPress as an agency. I've just done this as sort of friendly advice. Be wary about your plugins. The largest issue that I see about site speed is plugins, even disabled plugins. You think they're not doing anything, they bloody well are, okay? You should be getting rid of them. And if you're not using a plugin, it's not active in terms of actually using it on your site, don't keep it active and don't keep it on your site. Get rid of them. The amount of times that I've logged into a friend or a blogger that website, and I've just gone in and removed some plugins, and it's had a massive effect. All you're doing there is, it's like ivy on a wall. It's just seeping its roots into the very core brick of your website and slowly rotting it away and slowing it down. Its integrity is completely kaput. That's what plugins in the large case plugins are doing. And be careful about unknown plugins and stuff like that. They not only are they going to have site speed implementations, because like I said, developers are a bit lazy, also they can be a massive security risk as well.
So look, overall, I suppose for SEO, the process is this: find the keywords. We like to use Google Ads because those keywords are going to work well.
Yeah.
Make sure your site is fast and user friendly. Make sure the content on it is highly related to your keywords. Where you have gaps in content, start producing content around those keywords you want to rank for, and then push that content out there through all the social platforms, through all the blogging platforms, and that's, I suppose, at its most basic level, that is what you need to be doing to bring up your organic rankings within Google.
Yeah.
Look, there's a whole area we could start looking. We could start looking at structured data and looking at product listings, and there's a lot that could be done there. But at its most basic level, I always say, know what keywords are selling and generating leads, and start producing content around them, and just make sure your site is running fast and is user friendly, and that your content is good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Thanks for listening. That has been this week's episode of the Digital Marketing Scoop. Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of the Digital Marketing Scoop. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't subscribed yet, please jump into your Apple Podcasts, your Google Podcasts, Spotify, whatever your favorite podcast platform is, and just make sure to follow and subscribe. Also, if you'd like to leave a review if you enjoyed the episode, I'd absolutely love for you to do that. We put out an episode every single week, all with digital marketing tips, case studies, ways to build your business with digital marketing. Also, if you are interested in bringing your own business online or looking at scaling your business, we'd love to chat with you here at CLIQ. You can visit us online at CLIQ.ie.